In the early 1980s, I started writing my first book sitting in a prison cell. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment would eventually lead to more than 30 books and over 2 million words written. Back then, I wasn't thinking about becoming an author. I was simply trying to survive the time. When you're incarcerated, time moves very slowly. Writing became my escape. At first, I wrote everything longhand because I didn't have access to a typewriter. Later, while working office jobs inside the institution, I sometimes had the chance to use a typewriter after finishing my assigned work. That's when the writing began to take shape. During that time, I wrote 3 books. One became One Wilshire, an autobiographical account drawn from my experiences in high-stakes business before prison. I also wrote 2 novels, Pretty Face and Arabe, but none of those books were written with any expectation of building a career. Writing was simply something that helped me survive. I've never thought of myself as a trained writer. I've always thought of myself as a storyteller. Life after prison. When I was released in 1985, life moved in a different direction. I got involved in computer programming during the early days of DOS and later during the transition to Windows. I developed document management systems for law firms and medical practices at a time when the idea of paperless offices was still new. Later, I worked as a consultant in several fields, including work connected to major litigation and aviation cases. That work took me all over the world. But even during those years, I kept writing. Many people assume writers must have a lot of free time. That wasn't my experience. Much of my writing happened while traveling. I wrote on airplanes with a laptop on the tray table, headphones on, music playing loud in my ears. I've never paid much attention to lyrics. The music simply helped me focus. When I wasn't writing on planes, I was writing in hotel rooms. Most hotel rooms have a desk, and that desk became my office late at night after meetings or whenever I could find time. Sometimes I would sit down intending to write for a few minutes and suddenly realize 2 or 3 hours had passed. Over time, my writing style changed. Instead of forcing the story, I began letting the characters lead it. In some stories, one character begins telling the story, and when the scene changes, another character takes over the perspective. In a strange way, it often feels like I'm just listening and writing down what they say. When I first started writing, it was about survival. Writing helped me escape mentally from a difficult chapter of life. Years later, writing became something I squeezed into the cracks of a busy life. Today, it's different. Writing is no longer something I fit around everything else. It's something I focus on every day. Technology has changed the process too. Today, we have tools that didn't exist when I started. But one thing hasn't changed. Writing still feels necessary. Now the difference is that I want readers. For many years, I wrote simply because I felt compelled to write. Now I want to share the stories. After writing more than 30 books, a few lessons have become clear. First, you don't need perfect conditions to write. Real life is never perfect. Writers write wherever they are. Second, discipline matters more than inspiration. If you wait for inspiration, you might never start. Writing happens when you sit down and begin. Third, sometimes the characters tell the story. When you let them lead, the writing often becomes more natural. Fourth, technology changes, but storytelling doesn't. The tools evolve, but a good story is still at the center of every book. And finally, writing is a long game. You don't write one book and stop. You keep writing. People often say that everyone has a book inside of them. After writing more than 30 books, I believe that's probably true. The difference between people who write books and people who only talk about writing them usually comes down to one simple decision: sitting down and starting.